Gabriel Caldwell had just returned early from a business trip. He stepped inside, about to call for his wife and three children, when a hand suddenly clamped tightly over his mouth. He froze, startled, ready to shout, until he saw the terrified eyes of Elena, the housemaid. "Be quiet. Don't say a word," she whispered, her voice trembling. Gabriel tried to push her hand away, but when he looked through the crack of the living room door, what he saw made him stop cold. And in that instant, he understood. His perfect home had just whispered its most terrible truth. Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Now stay with us. The story begins 2 years earlier, the day she started the job. The first morning in Beverly Hills unfolded beneath a thin veil of mist, light diffused like gauze over the hills. The road to the Caldwell estate curved between two rows of white birches, their leaves trembling in the breeze as if waving to a stranger. The bus stopped, letting off a small woman with neatly tied brown hair and scuffed dark shoes dusted with road dirt. Elena Rivera stood there, taking a deep breath. Her breath mingled with the cool morning air, fading like smoke. 30 years old, widowed for 3, she had survived the windswept winters of Los Angeles with a small bag and a broken heart. Her husband, a plumber, had died suddenly, forcing her to leave their old apartment and seek work in other people's grand homes. The Caldwell mansion loomed ahead, vast, still, almost unfeeling. Its tall glass walls mirrored the gray sky. The reflecting pool lay so motionless it looked more like glass than water. The iron gate opened with a faint electric hum, cold, metallic. An elderly, thin, stern butler greeted her. "Miss Rivera?" "Yes, I'm here for the interview." "Mr. Caldwell is occupied, but he left instructions. You'll move in today." Elena nodded and stepped inside. The interior made her momentarily breathless. Too perfect, too clean, too empty. The air held traces of walnut wood, lavender oil, and the faint bitterness of cold coffee. The house was so beautiful it felt cold. Every object arranged with clinical precision, as though any breath might shatter its fragile silence. She glanced around, the sweeping staircase leading to the second floor, and a large black and white photograph in the foyer. A blonde woman smiling brightly, holding a bouquet of lavender. Beneath it, a small inscription read, "Claire Caldwell." Elena paused for a long moment. In her eyes, quiet understanding flickered. The absence of a loved one was always easy to recognize. By noon, while she was cleaning the kitchen, Gabriel Caldwell appeared. He didn't look like the man the press described, the charming, driven tech magnate. Before her stood a tall man with broad shoulders, his posture slightly stiff, as if carrying something invisible and heavy. His white shirt was immaculate, sleeves rolled just enough, his dark hair tousled slightly by the wind. Sunlight filtered through the glass wall across his face, sharp, calm, yet quietly tired. "You're the new one?" "Yes, Mr. Caldwell. I'm Elena Rivera." He gave a brief nod, not lingering. "The butler will show you the routines. I don't like changes to the household schedule." His voice was low, steady, not cold but distant. Elena only said, "Yes, sir," and fell silent, sensing that any sound here might fracture the air itself. When he left, she watched him go. Each of his steps seemed measured, precise, restrained, deliberate. People only walked like that when they were afraid of stumbling into memories. That afternoon, she met the 3 children. They stood at the end of the upstairs hallway, 3 small shadows. Ava, 12, with dark brown hair and eyes far older than her age, watched Elena with cautious silence. Not hostile, just guarded. Noah, 9, clutched a sketchbook, giving only a small nod. And Lily, 6, with loose curls hid behind her sister's leg, her bright eyes shy, like a little bird afraid to fly. Elena smiled gently. "I'm Elena. I'm here to help your father." None of them replied. Ava only tightened her hold on her sister's hand before the 3 quietly walked away, their soft footsteps whispering over the wooden floor. That evening, Elena stood at a distance in the dining room. The family sat at a long table meant for 10, yet there were only 4. Dinner felt more like a meeting. Gabriel read emails on his iPad. Ava cut her meat without looking up. Noah ate slowly, and little Lily occasionally glanced at the photo of her mother on the shelf, lips moving in silent words. Gabriel finally spoke. "Finish your homework after dinner. Bed early." No one answered. He didn't wait for one. From the doorway, Elena watched the scene, her chest tightening. She had worked in many wealthy homes, but never had she seen silence kept so deliberately, maintained like a rule, like a rope binding each of them in place. Night fell. After cleaning the kitchen and turning off the lights, she passed by Gabriel's study. The door was slightly open. A desk lamp cast its glow across blueprints in an idle laptop. He sat there, back straight, a glass of wine in hand, eyes fixed distantly on the portrait of Claire. Elena stopped for a moment. The golden light reflected in his eyes, the eyes of someone lost, yet still sitting inside the old map of his life, pretending to know the way. She knew that feeling. She'd spent nights by the window of her old apartment, staring at her wedding ring on the table and wondering, how does the world keep turning when I've stopped? She turned away, closing the door softly. Down the hallway, the clock ticked faintly, far away. The house was so vast that her footsteps vanished into the thick carpet without a sound. Elena thought, the scariest thing here wasn't loneliness. It was a sorrow preserved too carefully so that no one dared touch it. The next morning, when she drew open the curtains, sunlight streamed through the tall glass, flooding the polished wood floor like a mirror. Outside, the lavender garden swayed softly in the wind, its blossoms pale violet under the rising light. Elena smiled faintly, setting a pitcher of water on the table, and whispered to herself, if this house has forgotten how to laugh, maybe I'll find a way to wake it up again. She didn't know that. From that very moment, she had become the only one brave enough to listen to the whispers of the Caldwell house, and soon it would reveal to her a truth she never expected. A year after Elena began working, the Caldwell house underwent a change, not through sound, but through a different rhythm of breathing, one that carried the scent of expensive perfume, the sharp click of slender heels, and smiles calculated to perfection. Vanessa Moore arrived like a breath of fresh air. She appeared at a Tech Foundation's fundraising gala, where Gabriel was invited to speak publicly for the first time in 2 years. She had once been the PR director of a major media corporation, the kind of woman who could look straight into someone's eyes and make them see their own reflection in hers. Amber eyes, bright, warm, but never quite reaching the depths beneath. News of their engagement spread quickly through business circles. The press called Vanessa the woman who made the lonely millionaires smile again. Their photo appeared in magazines. He, calm and composed, she, elegant in a champagne satin gown, her smile perfectly measured to reassure the world that happiness could, after all, be bought with courage. But Elena, the one who quietly kept the house in order, saw something different. The day Vanessa moved in, the sky was clear, and the wind carried the scent of late-season lavender. Elena was arranging flowers in a glass vase when she heard the wheels of a suitcase rolling across the wooden floor. Vanessa entered, the sharp click of her heels echoing neatly with each step. She was tall and slender, wearing a white dress that accentuated her waist. Her chestnut hair shimmered with copper highlights, curled to perfection. Every strand of hair, every smile, every gesture seemed precisely measured, nothing more, nothing less. "Hello," Vanessa greeted softly, her voice smooth, slightly rehearsed, like a line from a public appearance. "You must be Elena, right? Gabriel told me so much about you, the woman who has kept this house in such perfect order." Elena replied quietly, "Yes, hello, Miss Moore." "Oh, please, call me Vanessa," she smiled, her eyes sweeping quickly around the living room. "It's beautiful here. I think I might make a few small changes. Something brighter, warmer." Warmer. The word made Elena's brow tighten. The house had always been cold. True, but it was the natural chill of memory, not the absence of love. She stayed silent, watching Vanessa pass by, leaving behind a trail of perfume, thick and sweet, like a lipstick mark on a wineglass. That evening, Gabriel hosted a small dinner. The 3 children were told to dress nicely to welcome your new mother. Ava, 11, sat silent throughout the meal. Noah ate slowly, holding his spoon but barely swallowing. Lily, 8, was the only one who tried to seem cheerful. She gave Vanessa a drawing of the family, 4 people holding hands under the sun. Vanessa looked at it and smiled lightly. How lovely. But next time, sweetheart, remember to draw mommy too, okay? The words floated by like a breeze, but Elena saw Ava's shoulders stiffen, and Noah set his spoon down, eyes cast low. Gabriel didn't notice. He smiled, the rare kind of smile Elena had seen before. The smile of a man trying to believe that things would, somehow, turn out fine. In the days that followed, Vanessa began her changes. She changed the curtains, the flowers, and the way the table was set. Claire's photo still stood on the shelf, but each week it was nudged a little further aside, a centimeter at a time, until one day it vanished completely. Elena found the frame behind the bookshelf, dust gathering softly on the glass. One afternoon, as she passed through the kitchen, Vanessa said casually, "You know, Elena, children need structure. Gabriel is too soft. I want to teach them discipline." "As long as they're happy, ma'am." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Happiness doesn't just happen. It must be taught, just like I was taught to become a proper woman." Her words rang out like the soft clink of crystal glasses, pleasant but ice cold. Elena began to notice the way Vanessa looked at the children, not with affection, but with an urge to correct. When Ava answered slowly, Vanessa's glance sharpened, her smile thinning by half an inch. When Noah spilled his orange juice, she stayed silent too long, the kind of silence that made the boy tremble. Only Lily remained innocent, still chirping, "Mommy Vanessa," in her bright little voice, not understanding why Ava always held her hand so tightly in the hallway. One evening after dinner, Gabriel thanked his new wife for bringing warmth back to this house. Vanessa smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just want to help you start over." From a distance, Elena watched, her chest tightening. She wasn't sure whether start over meant salvation or erasure. Outside, the night wind swept through the lavender rose. The scent was still there, but fainter now, mixed with expensive perfume and polished words. The Caldwell house, once only missing laughter, seemed warmed indeed. But Elena knew better than anyone that warmth did not come from love. It was the heat of a quiet fire, one that was already beginning to burn everything down. The sky over Beverly Hills darkened earlier than usual. The clouds were the color of lead, and the city lights below flickered faintly like distant candles along the hillside. Inside the Caldwell mansion, the thick wine-colored drapes had already been drawn. The kitchen light glowed a pale gold, cold and lonely, spilling across the walls like a remnant of memory that refused to fade. Gabriel was away. He had just flown to San Francisco for a 2-day conference. Without him, the mansion felt even quieter, emptier, like the last trace of warmth and reason had left with him. Elena was folding laundry in the utility room when she heard something, not loud but sharp. A sound like a strangled sob caught in her throat. She froze, listening. It came again, clearer this time. A small, hoarse, frightened cry. Setting the clothes aside, Elena moved softly through the hallway. The sound led her to the kitchen door, where the light reflected off the polished tiles. She stopped in the doorway, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Lily stood pressed against the corner wall, her tiny hands trembling. Vanessa, dressed in a pearl silk nightgown, her hair pinned in an elegant twist, her flawless face frozen into something beautiful and cruel, was bending down, fingers gripping Lily's wrist so tightly her skin had turned white. A glass of milk had spilled, spreading across the floor. The white liquid pooled at the girl's feet, soaking into her cat-shaped slippers. "The millionaire's little girl. So clumsy." Vanessa's voice was calm even, but her eyes flashed with a sharp, cutting gleam. Lily flinched, wide-eyed, tears welling but not falling, her lips quivering soundlessly. I'm sorry, Mommy." A chill surged up Elena's spine. She wanted to step forward, to say something, but her feet felt nailed to the floor. For a fleeting moment, the image of the woman in the old photograph came to her mind. Claire, the late mother. If Claire were still alive, Elena thought, would this child even know what fear feels like? Vanessa's grip tightened. The small cry that escaped Lily's throat was like a rip in the air itself. "Stand up straight. A Caldwell girl doesn't cry over stupid mistakes. You think tears make people pity you?" Lily tried to stand tall, but her little shoulders trembled. Two tears slipped down her cheeks, mixing with the spilled milk. Elena stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but something in her eyes had shifted. "What's happening here, Miss Moore?" Vanessa turned, her smile appearing as swiftly as a door opening. "Oh, Miss Rivera," she said, releasing Lily's wrist and smoothing the child's hair. "It's nothing. I was just teaching her a little discipline. She needs to learn to be more careful, that's all." That smile was too polished, too soft. The kind you wear for a magazine shoot, not for comforting a child. Elena knelt down, gently wiping the milk with a cloth, then said to Lily, "It's okay, sweetheart. Go wash your hands." The little girl nodded and left the kitchen, her small frame drawn tight, as if afraid even her shadow might make a sound. Vanessa poured herself a glass of white wine, her tone casual, almost airy. "Rich kids spoil easily, you know. Someone has to be firm, or they'll never learn boundaries." Elena answered quietly, "Sometimes boundaries only need a hug." Vanessa gave a soft, tilted smile, beautiful but cold. "I don't hug people just so they can cry on my shoulder. The world out there doesn't coddle anyone." Elena said nothing more. She knew words couldn't win against someone like Vanessa, but a deeper chill stirred in her chest. She could sense it clearly now. Something was wrong in the way this woman looked at those children. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Elena sat in her small room, gazing through the window at the lavender garden outside. The moon hung low and pale. A soft breeze brushed through the curtains. Yet the mansion was unnervingly silent. She could hear the faint whistle of wind through the drapes and footsteps upstairs, the measured, confident steps of someone used to commanding, not loving. Elena closed her eyes, recalling the image of Vanessa's hand on Lily's wrist. Long fingers, nude nails glinting faintly under the kitchen light. Beautiful, delicate, but the kind of hand meant to control, not to care. She sighed. From that night onward, something inside her shifted. Not just fear of what might happen, but awareness. She had seen in Vanessa's eyes what no one else had seen, a gaze lacking affection, but rich in control. The next morning, Lily sat silently in the kitchen, faint red marks still visible on her wrists. Elena crouched down, forcing her voice into something light and gentle, as though nothing had happened. "Would you like some pancakes, sweetheart?" Lily nodded slightly, eyes still downcast. "If you spill milk again, I'll clean it up." "It's all right." The little girl hesitated, then looked up. "Mommy, Vanessa said I'm stupid." "I'm not stupid, am I?" Elena smiled, though her voice tightened in her throat. "No, honey. You're just a little girl learning how to live. Everyone's clumsy at first." Lily smiled faintly, small but real, and hugged her teddy bear tightly to her chest. Elena looked out the window. The first sunlight of morning fell across the lavender field, glowing soft and violet. But instead of peace, she felt only the faint crackle of something smoldering beneath the calm. A warning flame, quietly waiting to rise beyond control. Autumn came earlier than usual. The birch trees around the Caldwell estate turned pale yellow, and dry leaves fell onto the porch roof like old letters no one would ever read. The house was still elegant, well lit, filled with the polite laughter of perfectly arranged dinners. But anyone who truly listened would notice. There were no children's voices anymore. Ava changed first. At 11, she had once loved discussing school, books, and small science experiments in class. Now she was quiet, like a shadow. Whenever Vanessa entered the room, Ava would instinctively stand, take a step back, her shoulders tightening in a silent reflex of defense. Vanessa never yelled or hit her. She only looked, a long, cold, smooth stare, like a blade gliding over skin without leaving blood. At dinner, when Gabriel asked, "Ava, how was school today?" she would answer in a voice as soft as wind passing through a window. "Good." Vanessa smiled, pouring more wine for her husband. "She's a little shy. I'm helping her learn to speak with discipline, to know when silence is the better choice." Gabriel nodded, tired. He thought it was good. He believed his new wife was teaching the children how to grow up. Only Elena realized that ever since Vanessa started teaching, Ava hadn't smiled once. Noah changed too. The boy who used to be mischievous, who loved drawing dinosaurs and paper planes, now drew only dark pictures. Elena often found him sitting in the corner of the playroom, head bowed, clutching a charcoal pencil. One day, while cleaning his room, she discovered a stack of papers hidden in his desk drawer. Rough sketches, a large house with no windows, inside three tiny faceless figures. Above them, black strings hanging from the ceiling, tied to each figure like marionettes. In the corner of the page, Noah had scrawled, "Do not speak." Elena clenched the paper, her heart tightening painfully. That evening, she asked softly, "Noah, what were you drawing?" "Just a game," he said. "What kind of game makes you sad like that?" He stayed silent for a moment, then whispered, "Miss Vanessa says, people who talk too much get disliked." Elena looked at him, feeling fear. Not fear of Vanessa, but of the quiet way fear itself seeps into a child's mind, destroying from within without making a sound. Lily, the youngest at 6, seemed the most carefree, at least on the outside. She still clutched her teddy bear everywhere, still called Mommy Vanessa in a voice sweet as candy. But Elena noticed her sleep was no longer peaceful. Many nights the little girl murmured in her dreams, her voice thin and trembling. "Miss Vanessa said, don't talk about Mommy anymore. Mommy Claire is bad. Mommy Claire is weak." Each time Elena sat up, stroking the child's hair, feeling her heart tighten with every beat. She remembered how Claire had once been the soul of the house, a mother who loved through homemade breakfasts and afternoons reading on the balcony. But now those memories were fading, as if someone were carefully scraping them away from the children's minds, piece by piece. Gabriel didn't notice. He was busy. The busier he was, the easier it became to lull himself with the thought that everything was fine. He saw Vanessa taking the children to school, smiling at neighbors, posing for Christmas photos beside the glowing tree. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect, like a painting layered over and over to hide the cracks beneath. When Elena quietly said, "Mr. Caldwell, I think something's wrong with Ava and Noah." He looked up, weary-eyed, and replied, "Vanessa told me they just need time to adjust. She knows how to manage a family. I trust her." Elena looked at him for a long moment. The man was living in another version of the house, one that was peaceful, well-lit, and without tears. She wanted to say more, but seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, she stayed silent. One afternoon, Ava sat on the back steps, sunlight slanting through rows of pale lavender. She held a hair tie in her hand, twisting it gently, and suddenly asked, her voice distant, "Miss Elena, if you stay quiet long enough, people will forget you're sad, right?" Elena's throat tightened. In front of her wasn't just a child. It was a small soul learning to hide pain, a lesson no child should ever have to learn. She touched Ava's shoulder gently, her eyes filled with tenderness. "No, sweetheart. People don't forget. But when you don't speak, they'll think you're fine, and they'll stop coming to you." Ava looked up, her dark eyes heavy as twilight. "Miss Vanessa says silence is polite." Elena pressed her lips together, her heart twisting. Inside the house, Vanessa's voice floated out, soft as piano music. "Ava, where are you? It's time for your piano lesson, darling. Don't make Mommy remind you." Ava stood, head lowered, walking back inside, her small figure swallowed by the golden light of dusk. That night, when Gabriel called from the office, his tone was calm. "I think things at home are getting better, don't you?" Vanessa leaned back in her chair, smiling faintly, running a perfect hand through her perfect hair. "Much better, darling. The children are learning to behave." Upstairs in the darkened rooms, Ava sat at her desk. Noah kept drawing the same picture, and Lily murmured in her sleep. The house was utterly silent, a silence so heavy you could almost hear fear itself growing inside it. That afternoon, the rain fell thin as silk threads, each droplet sliding down the wide glass panels, blurring the lavender garden outside into a haze of soft purple. The Caldwell mansion lay under a dim gray light, silent, emotionless, as if even the sky had grown weary. Elena rolled up her sleeves, walking slowly down the marble hallway. She was dusting the dining table when Lily ran past, clutching her teddy bear tightly, her eyes red and swollen. The sleeve of her left arm was slightly crooked. When Elena bent down to fix it, she saw a deep, narrow bruise around the child's wrist, unmistakably shaped like fingers. "Lily, what happened to your hand?" "I fell." The answer came too quickly to be true. The little girl hid her hand behind her back, her voice trembling. "Mommy," Vanessa said, "not to make a big deal." Elena froze. Her heart pounded. The blood in her body felt like it had turned to ice. She knew that feeling, the survival instinct of silence. But this time, she couldn't stay silent. That night, when everyone had gone upstairs, Elena sat alone in the kitchen. The wall clock struck 10. The warm light fell across the crystal vase in the living room, the one Vanessa loved most, always filled with fresh flowers each morning. Under the light, the red roses looked like dried blood. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny camera, no bigger than her thumb, the kind she'd bought with her entire savings. She twisted the lid, inserted the battery, checked the signal light, and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled, not from fear of being caught, but from fear of what she might find. She found the perfect spot, inside the vase among the stems of roses and dried lavender, high enough to face the living room, where Vanessa usually held her lessons in manners. When the camera was finally in place, the house sank back into stillness. But for the first time, Elena realized this silence wasn't harmless. It was a curtain, thick, heavy, and hiding something rotten beneath. The next morning, as Gabriel left early for a meeting, Elena pretended to tidy the kitchen while keeping her eyes on Vanessa. The woman moved through the house in a gray silk dress, her every gesture deliberate, graceful, immaculate. Even cruelty looked elegant on her. She always knew how to appear refined, even while destroying someone with a smile. At noon, Vanessa called the 3 children into the living room. Elena stood behind the kitchen door, heart pounding, fingers clenched so tight her knuckles ached. Through the narrow gap, she saw Vanessa sitting on the sofa, back straight, legs crossed, a cup of tea beside her. The 3 children stood in a line before her. "Kneel," Vanessa said. Her voice was soft as silk and cold as steel. The children lowered themselves, knees touching the wooden floor. "Who left a glass of milk on the table last night?" No one spoke. "Good. Then all 3 of you will take the punishment." She laid a sheet of paper on the floor. 10 bold printed lines titled, "The 10 Caldwell Family Rules." Vanessa read them aloud, each word sharp as a carving blade. Do not talk back to adults. Do not cry when punished. Do not mention your birth mother. Every mistake is a lesson. Father is always right. Stepmother always knows best. Tears are a weakness. Never tell father or the maid. Speak only when permitted. Silence is a virtue. Lily broke down, sobbing. Vanessa didn't yell. She only smiled, lips curling faintly. "You just broke rule number 2. She lifted the little girl's chin, her tone soft, almost tender, but deadly. "If you cry again, you'll lose your privilege to see your friends at school. Now read them, all 3 of you, together." The children's voices trembled, raspy, almost inaudible. "Do not talk back to adults. Do not cry when punished. Do not mention your birth mother." Behind the wall, Elena's nails dug into her palms until she drew blood. Each line felt like a blade cutting childhood away from their small bodies. When Vanessa finally stood, she smiled and clapped her hands lightly. "Good. You're finally learning to behave. I'm so proud of you." As her heels clicked away down the hall, Elena rushed forward and dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around Lily. The girl froze for a moment, then burst into tears, real tears, unrestrained for the first time. "Miss Elena, I miss Mommy Claire, but Miss Vanessa says Mommy was weak. That's why she died." Elena's throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. Your mother wasn't weak. Only cruel people say things like that." She held all 3 children close, feeling their trembling against her chest. And in that moment, she knew, if she kept quiet any longer, she would become part of the crime herself. Night fell. Elena waited until the entire house was asleep before retrieving the memory card from the vase. In her small laundry room quarters, she sat before her laptop, heart hammering. The screen flickered to life. There it was, Vanessa on the leather chair, the cup of tea, her cold, commanding voice. The children knelt, their shoulders trembling, their heads bowed. Elena clamped a hand over her mouth as tears spilled down her face, half terror, half rage. She paused the video, staring at her own reflection in the mirror on the wall. Pale face, exhausted eyes, but different now. No longer just the maid, no longer the bystander. She understood that she had become a witness, and soon the only person who could save these children. The night sky shattered with thunder. The first storm of the season lashed across the Beverly Hills hillsides. Wind howling, rain crashing down in white sheets like thick curtains. On the road leading up to the Caldwell mansion, a black Range Rover sped through, its headlights slicing the rain in two. Gabriel Caldwell gripped the steering wheel tightly. The dashboard clock read 8:46 p.m. He had ended his business trip a day early, restless with anticipation. Vanessa will be so surprised. She loved lavender. He had brought her a fresh bouquet. On the back seat, the purple flowers rested in a paper bag, their scent soft and calming. Gabriel smiled faintly. It had been so long since he'd felt a reason to come home early. The rain poured harder. He turned off the engine, opened the car door, and ran up the porch. Warm light glowed through the cracks of the front door, the familiar golden hue of the mansion he once proudly called home. He slipped the key into the lock, hand closing around the handle. A deep breath, a smile, and as he was about to call out softly, Vanessa, Ava, Noah, Lily. A cold, trembling hand clamped over his mouth from behind. Gabriel jerked violently, instinct kicking in. He spun around ready to push away, but the woman behind him whispered urgently, her voice breaking with fear. Please, don't say anything. Please, don't go inside. Under the flickering porch light, he saw Elena Rivera. Her hair was drenched, plastered to her cheeks. Her maid's uniform was soaked through, her wide eyes filled with both terror and pain. What are you doing here? Why? Gabriel hissed, anger flashing in his tone. I know you won't believe me, Elena interrupted, breathless. But please, just look. Let me show you the truth. Wind howled through the open yard, making the curtain inside flutter faintly. Gabriel was about to shove her hand away, but the tremor in her voice, that real tremor of fear, made him stop. Elena pulled him close to the crack of the living room door. The light inside was warm, golden, gentle, but beneath it lay a silence that didn't belong. Gabriel leaned forward to look, and in a single second, his world shattered. His three children, Ava, Noah, and Lily, were kneeling on the cold marble floor, their heads bowed, hands on their knees, shoulders trembling with tiny, controlled shivers. Before them stood Vanessa, his wife, the woman he had once believed to be kind. She wore a crimson satin dress, a wine glass in hand, glinting under the chandelier like liquid blood. Her voice rang out, steady, cold, each word slicing the air like a blade. Do not cry. Anyone who cries kneels for one more hour. Lily whimpered softly, a tear falling onto the marble. Vanessa arched a brow. One more hour for you. Gabriel froze, every muscle locked in place. He wanted to rush in, to shout, to grab his children and tear them away. But Elena caught his arm, clutching his sleeve, eyes pleading. Don't! If you go in now, she'll deny everything. Please, watch. He stared at her, breath quick and ragged, his throat tight. Elena reached into her pocket, her hand trembling as she pulled out her phone. She opened a video. On the small screen was a familiar room, the same living room, filmed from another angle. Vanessa appeared in the frame, her face sharp and emotionless, her voice clear through the phone's speaker. Kneel. Repeat rule number 3. Do not mention your real mother. Good. Now rule number 8. Do not tell the maid. Each line, each word landed like a hammer blow to Gabriel's chest. He looked at his eldest, Ava, the gentle, confident girl who once loved to talk about books. Now her lips were pale, trembling, her eyes red. Noah bit his lip until it bled. Lily clutched her worn-out teddy bear, sobbing in silent gasps. No, it can't be, Gabriel whispered. She couldn't. Elena shook her head, tears streaking down her rain-soaked face. I've been recording for a week. I hoped I was wrong, but I wasn't. This is the truth. Gabriel stumbled back, hitting the wall, gasping like a drowning man. His gaze left the screen and drifted back through the crack in the door, where Vanessa now sat gracefully on the couch, pouring more wine, her lips curved in a soft smile. A smile tender enough to hide every sin. Outside, thunder roared. Inside, Lily's sobs mixed with the wind, small broken sounds like the last breath of faith. Gabriel's fists clenched, his nails dug into his palms, blood seeping out. But he didn't feel it. His eyes locked on the scene before him, and in that moment, the shock inside him melted into something else. A cold, absolute fury. Not the heat of rage, but the deep, rising swell of hatred from the bottom of the sea. He nodded once, slowly. "Thank you, Elena." Elena looked at him, and for the first time the man's eyes no longer held exhaustion, only determination, and a pain that burned like fire. "I won't let her touch my children ever again." Outside, the storm screamed across the hills, but inside the glowing mansion, another storm had just begun, the storm of truth. The rain hadn't stopped. The sky outside split open with lightning, white, blinding, flashing through the tall glass windows and casting a harsh light across Gabriel's face. He looked pale, hollow, a man dragged out of a nightmare. He stepped out of the dark hallway, each footstep echoing against the slick marble floor. Vanessa sat on the sofa, a glass of wine in her hand, lounging gracefully, calm, as if nothing had happened. The three children were still kneeling on the floor, heads bowed, tears falling silently onto the polished wood. Gabriel stopped in the middle of the room, soaked to the bone, his gaze heavy as molten steel. "Gabriel?" Vanessa smiled, her voice unnaturally gentle. "You're home early." "I was just teaching the children some manners." He didn't answer. Gabriel set down a bouquet of lavender on the table. The petals were dripping, water pooling beneath them on the cold floor. Then he pulled out his phone and pressed the play button. A voice filled the air, sharp, chilling, undeniable. "They're a burden." Vanessa's tone was unmistakable. "No crying. No mention of your birth, mother." The words hung in the air, echoing off the walls like a sentence handed down in court. Vanessa froze for a heartbeat, then let out a small, crooked laugh. "You misheard. Elena set me up. She's manipulating you, trying to tear us apart." Gabriel didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on her, unblinking, unreadable. The lamplight flickered in his pupils, deep as a void. "Do you want me to show the part where you grabbed Lily by the wrist?" Vanessa inhaled sharply. The color drained from her face. "You don't understand. I was only trying to teach them discipline. That maid, she hates me. She wants to destroy this family." From the doorway, Elena stood drenched in rain. Her eyes held no anger, only sorrow. "I don't have to destroy anything," she said softly. "You already did." The air thickened until breathing felt impossible. Ava lifted her head. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, and her small hand clutching her sister's sleeve. Her throat trembled, but for the first time her voice broke through, thin as a thread yet cutting like glass. "Daddy, I'm scared of her." Everything in the house fell silent. Gabriel turned toward his daughter, and in that moment, something inside him broke. All the excuses, all the years of pretending, all the nights he told himself he had moved on, collapsed in the reflection of her terrified eyes. He turned back to Vanessa. His voice was low, hoarse, but every word landed like a hammer. "Vanessa, you're leaving this house." Tonight, the sentence fell like a verdict. Vanessa shot up, her face pale, twisting into fury. "You dare! I saved you from that wreck you were. I rebuilt your reputation, made the world forget you were a broken man after your wife died." Gabriel said nothing. He simply looked at her, the look of a man who had finally seen clearly through every layer of polish and deceit. "You didn't save me, Vanessa," he said quietly. "You just dragged me deeper into hell." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, jagged sound like glass shattering. "And you think anyone will take your side? A pathetic maid? I know everything about you, your company, your secrets. You'll regret this. No one wants a weak man like you." Gabriel stepped closer, his voice low but cutting through the storm outside. "I'd rather live alone than with a devil." Wind howled through the hallways. A flash of lightning split the sky, illuminating Vanessa's face, where beauty and madness collided. She staggered back, eyes wild. "You'll lose everything, Gabriel Caldwell. You and those brats will crawl back to me and beg for mercy." Gabriel opened the door. Rain and wind surged in, sweeping through the room, carrying away the last trace of her perfume. "No," he said quietly. "We just learned how to stand." He reached for Ava, Noah, and Lily, three small, trembling hands, cold as ice, but alive with something real again. Elena stood nearby, tears glimmering in her eyes. Behind them, Vanessa screamed, her voice lost in the roar of the storm, only one broken sentence echoing through the thunder. "You'll regret this." But Gabriel didn't look back. He lifted Lily into his arms, took the others by the hand, and stepped out into the raging rain. The wind stung, the cold cut deep, but for the first time in years it felt clean. After all the years of living inside, this was the purest cold he had ever known. The morning after the storm, the Caldwell mansion looked like a ship that had just survived a tempest. Broken lavender branches lay scattered across the garden. Fallen leaves blanketed the walkway, yet the air felt lighter. As if the night wind had swept away all the poison, leaving behind a fragile peace. Vanessa had left during the night. No goodbyes, no suitcase. Only the faint chill of her perfume lingered in the air, and a few shards of a shattered wine glass on the floor. The house was silent again, but this time it was a true silence. Not the kind born from fear, but from freedom. Ava was the first to break that silence. Every night she went around the house checking the doors, each lock, each latch, carefully like a small ritual to reassure herself. Whenever the wind howled too loudly, she would startle, heart racing. But when she saw Elena sitting in the living room, quietly knitting, Ava would finally return to bed. "Miss Elena, do you think she'll ever come back?" "No, sweetheart," Elena answered softly, her smile as gentle as a lullaby. "The storm is over. Darkness can't live where the light stays." Noah, meanwhile, spoke less and less. He avoided touching glasses, as well as anything made of glass or crystal. Once he accidentally dropped a plastic cup and panicked, crying as he apologized over and over. Hearing the commotion, Gabriel ran in, scooped his son into his arms, and held him tight until the boy's shaking shoulders began to calm. "It's okay, Noah. I'm not angry. No one is angry." That was the first time Gabriel cried in front of his children. And Lily, she still talked in her sleep. Sometimes, even half dreaming, she would sit up, whispering, "Please don't make me kneel anymore. I've been good." Gabriel would sit by her bed, brushing her hair back, his heart twisting painfully in his chest. He realized then, fear only takes moments to plant, but a lifetime to erase. In the days that followed, Gabriel began learning how to be a father again, starting with the smallest things. He woke up early to make breakfast, fumbling with the frying pan, sometimes burning the toast. Elena stood nearby, quietly guiding his hands, her soft smile warming the kitchen more than any sunlight could. The children watched, and for the first time in many months, laughter returned. Soft, brief, but real. The house began to change. The heavy perfume was replaced by the scent of baked bread and dried lavender. Claire's photos were placed back on the shelves, not as symbols of sorrow, but as reminders that love had once been real. At night, Gabriel often sat alone in his study, looking out toward the garden. The rain had stopped, but the past still lingered, etched into him like cracks in stone. Elena would come in with a cup of tea. She wouldn't speak. She would simply sit beside him, quietly. Sometimes healing doesn't need words, only presence. One morning, sunlight poured through the windows for the first time in weeks, golden as honey across the floor. Lily was watering the flowers on the porch, while Ava showed Noah how to place lavender sprigs into a vase. Gabriel watched them from afar, a tired but gentle smile on his face. Elena stepped out, her white dress brushing against the breeze, her hair carrying a faint scent of jasmine soap. "I still don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. She shook her head. "Don't thank me. Just live well. For them." He nodded. Their eyes met, soft, deep, steady. The gaze of two people who had weathered the same storm, now standing together in the light. That morning the sky was astonishingly clear, After weeks of rain, sunlight returned, streaming diagonally through the kitchen windows, laying down soft golden stripes across the table like ribbons of honey. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweetness of half-made pancakes, and the quiet clinking of forks and plates filled the air, the sound of life gently finding its rhythm again. Gabriel stood by the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. The light touched his face, the face of a man who once had everything: wealth, reputation, and the illusion of control. But who had lost what truly mattered? The lines of exhaustion were still there, faintly etched at the corners of his eyes. His broad shoulders, once rigid from years of restraint, were now loosening, though he still carried the hesitant air of someone learning how to breathe again. He watched Elena dust powdered sugar over the pancakes. Her hair was loosely tied, a few strands brushing her neck. Her face was gentle, but her eyes held something deeper, the quiet depth of someone who had known loss and therefore cherished even the smallest piece. After breakfast, Gabriel stood on the porch, silently watching his 3 children play in the yard. Ava was teaching Noah how to tie his shoes. Lily laughed as the wind lifted the hem of her dress. The scene was so simple it felt extravagant. He smiled, and then realized it wasn't real. It was a reflex, a habit. He smiled because he thought he should, not because he actually could. When Elena stepped outside, he said quietly, his voice rough, as if dragging up a confession that had waited too long to surface. "I've forgotten how to laugh, Elena." "You just did," she said softly. "No, that was muscle memory. I've also forgotten how to say anything kind. It's like everything inside me is made of broken pieces, hard, sharp, and silent." Elena looked at him. Her gaze held no pity, only understanding, the kind that recognizes another's pain but never touches it with condescension. "You don't have to be perfect, Gabriel," she said. "You just have to be real." Her words fell into the quiet like dust in sunlight. Light barely there, yet somehow opening something vast inside him, a space not of emptiness, but of hope. The next morning it happened. Gabriel sat at the breakfast table, flipping through documents, when Noah ran in holding a glass of milk. "Dad, I want to pour it myself." "Be careful," Gabriel murmured, not looking up. And then, crash. The glass tipped. Milk spilled across the table, dripping down onto the floor. Everyone froze. Ava stopped breathing. Lily's eyes went wide. Elena paused mid-motion, the wooden spatula still in her hand. They all waited, for the familiar sound of anger, for the fear they'd learned to expect. Gabriel stared at the puddle of milk, then at his son's trembling hands and tearful eyes. I'm sorry, Dad," Noah stammered. For a heartbeat, the past rushed in. Vanessa's shouts, the frightened faces, the tears no one dared to shed. Gabriel took a long breath. Then he laughed. A real laugh. Hoarse at first, uncertain, but growing round and warm. Alive. "It's all right, son. We've got a floor mop for that." Noah blinked. Ava giggled first. Lily followed, then Elena joined in. The laughter filled the kitchen, sweeping through it like a breeze that unlocked every door long closed. Gabriel crouched down, helping Noah wipe the milk as he grinned. "Let's see. Next time, we'll make milkshakes. Spilling milk is an essential first skill." Noah's eyes widened. "So, I'm good at it." "The best there is." Elena watched them, her smile quiet, tender. She had never seen him like this before. No longer the cold millionaire. No longer the man shadowed by grief, but a father, learning how to love again through small, imperfect acts. When breakfast ended, the house was drenched in sunlight. The broken glass had been replaced, but a faint milk stain still shimmered on the floor. And Elena didn't wipe it away, because to her it wasn't a mess. It was proof, the first trace of a home that knew how to laugh again. Gabriel looked out the window at the children chasing each other through the garden. "I thought I'd lost everything," he murmured, "but maybe I just forgot how to live." Elena answered, her voice soft as morning mist. "No one forgets forever, Gabriel. They just need someone to remind them." Sunlight pooled across the table, warm, golden, alive, painting every smiling face in its glow. A simple morning, once Such a thing would have seemed impossible. But for them, that very simplicity was the miracle. The first summer morning dawned earlier than usual. Golden sunlight poured through the wide glass windows, glinting across the polished wooden floor and weaving through pots of lavender blooming on the porch. The Caldwell house, once filled with shadows and fear, now pulsed with the quiet rhythm of life again, like a gentle melody returning after a long silence. From upstairs came the sound of a piano, each note light as sunbeams touching the morning air. Ava sat before her mother's old piano, hair neatly tied back, her face calm and focused, lips pressed in concentration. Each time her fingers met the keys, the sound was no longer trembling, but steady, warm, and sure. In the living room, laughter echoed as Elena lifted Lily high and spun her in the air. The little girl's white dress flared, her hair fanned out, and the sunlight caught them both, as if they belonged to the same glimmering frame of light. And Noah, the quietest of them all, sat cross-legged on the floor before a half-finished painting. The dark shades that once filled every page had been replaced by yellow, green, and orange. Across that bright canvas, he painted a house, blue sky above it, open windows, and people smiling inside. Gabriel stood by the doorway, watching for a long moment. He could hardly believe this was the same home, or the same children who had once knelt on a cold marble floor, trembling at the sound of footsteps. Elena walked over, her hands still stained with watercolor. She wore a pale linen dress, her hair tied in a loose bun, her face a little tired, but her eyes bright and kind. "That's a beautiful painting, Noah," she said, bending to wipe his small hands with a wet cloth. "Miss Elena," Noah looked up, his young voice clear. "I drew Mommy here." "Oh, your Mommy?" "Yes. You said she liked lavender." Elena smiled. She had begun telling the children about Claire, not with tears, but with tenderness. Every night before bed, she would open Claire's old journal and read softly, her voice low and warm. Today, Ava played her first song. She missed a few notes, but it was adorable. Noah mixed paint colors again and spilled half the jar, but Gabriel just laughed. Lily finally said Mommy clearly today. Maybe life doesn't need to ask for more. The children listened, eyes glimmering. No one cried. They only smiled quietly, as if their mother were holding them through those words. Elena hadn't replaced Claire. She had simply sewn back the torn fabric of time. One afternoon, Gabriel returned from work, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He heard laughter drifting in from the garden, a sound he had almost forgotten. Ava was teaching Lily to dance. Noah was playing the director, and Elena sat on a wooden chair, holding Gabriel's old video camera, capturing each joyful moment. Sunlight filtered through the trees. The lavender bushes swayed, and strands of Elena's hair floated around her face, glowing as though the light itself belonged to her. Gabriel stood still. Something inside his chest loosened, light and warm, yet achingly tender. She saw him, tilted her head, and smiled. "You're home early. The kids are filming their happy family movie." "I can see that," he replied, his voice low, touched with emotion. That night, dinner was filled with the clinking of laughter and spoons. Ava shared stories from school. Noah proudly talked about the painting he was sending to the children's art show, and Lily giggled that Elena's pudding was sweeter than clouds. Gabriel sat at the head of the table, one hand resting near his teacup, saying little, just watching his 3 children and the woman cutting cake for them. He didn't need fancy words to understand. He was witnessing the most precious thing life could offer, a home reborn. Later, after the children had gone to sleep, he stepped out onto the porch. The sky was full of stars. The wind carried the faint scent of lavender. Elena was folding a blanket on the bench. He walked over, stood beside her, and for a while neither of them spoke. "Elena," he said at last, his voice hoarse but gentle, "thank you for not giving up on them, or on me." She looked up, her dark brown eyes deep and luminous beneath the moonlight. "They never gave up on you, Gabriel," she whispered. "They were just waiting for you to come home." Gabriel lowered his head and smiled. This time truly, not forced, not broken, And in that moment, he finally understood. Elena was not just a housekeeper, not just the one who kept things tidy or cooked meals. She was the keeper of this home's soul, the one who gathered every shattered piece of him and his children, mending them with patience, kindness, and a love that asked for no name. That night, the wind was gentle, like a lullaby. Inside the house, the warm lights glowed softly. The picture frames on the wall reflected new smiles, not the smiles of a happiness once lost, but of a happiness found again. And Gabriel knew at last the light had truly returned. The early summer afternoon breathed softly, like the first exhale of someone waking from a long sleep. In the garden behind the Caldwell mansion, sunlight slanted through the trees, scattering over the ground in shimmering patches of gold dust. Gabriel knelt among the soil, holding a small spade, while Elena sat nearby, her cotton gloves already darkened with earth. The air was filled with the gentle fragrance of grass, dry petals, and freshly turned soil, a quiet scent of peace. Beside them, the children worked too. Noah dug small holes, his face smudged with dirt but glowing with a grin. Ava carried pots of seedlings, carefully placing each sprig of lavender into the ground. And Lily ran around with a tiny watering can, humming under her breath. Purple flowers smell like sunshine. Mommy loved purple flowers too. Gabriel froze. He looked at his youngest daughter, his expression softening. For years he had avoided mentioning Claire's name, afraid that speaking of her would deepen the children's pain. But now he realized it was his silence that had hurt them most. Elena noticed the change in his eyes. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Let her talk," she murmured. "Sometimes remembering is how we let someone stay." Gabriel nodded slowly, his deep voice carrying through the warm breeze. Claire loved this scent. She used to say lavender made her feel at peace. Elena paused, her hands stilling over the soil. She looked around, at the newly planted rose, the soft sunlight glowing over tender violet buds. "Well," she whispered, as if to someone far away, "then this house finally has peace again." For a moment the garden fell utterly still. Then a soft gust swept through, stirring the young lavender stalks, releasing their fragrance, delicate, pure, and sweet as memory. Gabriel closed his eyes. For a fleeting second, he thought he could hear Claire's laughter, the faint notes of her piano drifting from upstairs, Lily's small voice calling, "Mommy," under the pale afternoon sun. But when he opened his eyes, there was no ghost of the past, only Elena. She was crouched over the soil, patting it gently around the roots, sunlight tracing the curve of her cheek. Her skin was touched with gold, a bead of sweat rolling down as her calm eyes glimmered with quiet strength. It was a simple moment, but it carried weight. He realized then, some people didn't heal others with grand gestures. They did it through patience, through gentleness, by simply staying. The sun sank lower behind the trees, its light turning soft, spilling a warm gold across their shoulders. Ava turned on a song from her phone, a piano melody that Claire once used to play. The notes floated through the air, weaving into the scent of lavender, the laughter of children, the whisper of wind, the pulse of a heart finally steady again. Gabriel rose, brushing soil from his hands, and looked at the garden before him. Neat rows of lavender stretching like ribbons of soft purple. He spoke quietly, voice low but full of feeling. "Thank you, Elena. Not just for helping me plant this garden, but for helping me plant my life again." Elena didn't answer right away. She looked at him, her smile faint, like sunlight after rain. "No one can live someone else's life, Gabriel. I just reminded you that the light never left. It was only waiting for you to open the door." The evening wind stirred once more, carrying the lavender's fragrance through the air. On the porch, Lily skipped in circles. Ava laughed, and Noah chased a white butterfly across the grass. Gabriel watched them, then looked at Elena, and for the first time, there was no hollow space left inside him to be afraid of. The sun sank slowly, golden as honey, painting Elena's hair and Gabriel's shoulders with the soft, forgiving light of a day finally at peace. That evening, the Caldwell house glowed like a heart relit. On the long oak dining table, candles flickered softly, their golden light blending with the faint scent of lavender, warm bread, and creamy soup. The window was slightly ajar, and the night breeze slipped through the curtains, carrying the whisper of rustling leaves. A simple sound, yet to them it was the music of peace. Elena set down the final dish, a golden lasagna topped with melted cheese, its steam curling upward like thin morning mist. Ava helped arrange the silverware. Noah poured water with great care. Lily twirled around the table, singing and laughing, her voice as clear as the chime of glass. Gabriel sat at the head of the table, watching them all. The old clock in the corner still ticked steadily, but time no longer felt cold. The warm light reflected in his eyes. The eyes of a man who had once lost everything, now seated in the middle of what he thought he'd never find again. Family. Our first dinner, after everything, Elena said softly, lifting her glass. After everything? Lily tilted her head, wide-eyed. Gabriel smiled. After the long days when we forgot how to smile? Ava set her glass down, her voice small but firm. When I grow up, I want to build houses for kids who don't have one. Elena turned to her, smiling. That's a beautiful dream, Ava. Because I know what it feels like. To lose a home, the girl said, her eyes catching the candlelight. Noah looked up, a smudge of soup at the corner of his mouth. I'll draw books for Lily to read before bed. I'll draw houses with flowers, and no one will be scared anymore. Lily clapped her hands. I want to be the princess in your books. Laughter rippled through the room, warm and light, spreading across the walls like little sparks of gold. Gabriel looked at his children, then at Elena. The candlelight flickered across her face, half in glow, half in shadow. Her brown eyes reflected the flames, deep and calm. He said quietly, his voice low and full of warmth, You remind me of what home feels like. Elena froze for a breath, the napkin in her hand pausing midair. Then she smiled, a smile so soft it felt like a sigh. I didn't remind you, Gabriel. Home was always here. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Only the flutter of candlelight and the quiet rhythm of a heartbeat filled the space between them. When dinner was over, the children climbed into bed, curling up under sun-scented blankets. Their laughter lingered faintly on the staircase, like bright dust that refused to fade. Gabriel stepped out into the garden, where moonlight pooled across the stone path. Elena followed, carrying 2 cups of ginger tea, the steam rising in soft, fragrant curls. They sat by the pool. The still surface mirrored the night sky. Stars trembling gently over 2 faces, one once broken, one quietly strong. Gabriel set down his cup and spoke in a low voice, as if to himself. Do you think someone who's lost everything can still learn to love again? Elena was silent for a moment, watching the water shimmer with their reflections. The breeze drifted past, stirring the lavender by the poolside, its scent wrapping around them. Then she answered, her tone calm but sure. If someone still fears losing another, it means they still know how to love. Gabriel looked up, meeting her gaze. No fireworks, no grand confession, only a stillness deep and alive, like the quiet current beneath the surface of a lake. His hand brushed hers. A light touch, yet it sent a tremor through both their hearts, a soft chord struck between 2 souls learning the same melody. Neither of them spoke again. They simply sat there beneath a sky full of stars, listening to the wind, to the hush of the water, and to the sound of their hearts finding rhythm again. They didn't need promises, they didn't need words. It was enough just to breathe together, enough to know that, after everything, they had come home. 1 year later. Spring draped the hillsides of Beverly Hills in a soft, velvety light. The Caldwell house, once echoing with tears, now hummed with the sounds of life. The piano keys clattered gently upstairs where Ava practiced. Lily's laughter rang across the garden, where lavender bloomed into a sea of purple. The scents of baked bread, coffee, and morning wind mingled like a warm whisper. Gabriel stood by the window, watching it all. In his eyes, there was no weariness anymore, only the calm of a man who had walked through the storm and come out whole. He spoke softly, almost to himself. The house has learned to sing again. That morning, they all drove downtown. to the unveiling of the Caldwell Foundation's new silver building. Above the main gate, sunlight glinted off the engraved words, "For every child's voice." It was Gabriel's dream, born from his own pain, turned into action through Elena's hands, a gift for every child who had ever been silenced. Elena walked beside him, dressed simply in an ivory dress. Sunlight reflected off the tall glass panels, catching her soft brown hair, and for a moment it looked as though she was shining from within. When they stepped onto the stage, the hall was full, but in that moment, Gabriel only saw her. His voice was steady, deep and resonant. "Our house once whispered through tears. Now it sings through hope, and the one who made that possible is her. Thank you, Elena, for helping me hear life again." Applause rose like waves. Then Gabriel turned to her, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Elena froze. The wind outside swept through the open doors, lifting the hem of her dress. He knelt down beneath the glow of 100 lights. In his hand, a delicate rose gold ring, crowned with a small amethyst gem, the color of lavender, of peace, of the home they had saved. The three children burst onto the stage, laughing and shouting, "Say yes, Mom! Be our mom!" The audience laughed. Some wiped their tears. Elena covered her mouth, eyes glistening beneath the lights. Gabriel looked up at her, his voice trembling, but true. "Thank you for hearing the whisper, when I couldn't hear myself. Will you make this house a home forever?" She didn't speak. She only knelt, placed her hand over his, where the ring waited, and nodded. "I will." The room erupted in applause. Music swelled. Purple ribbons filled the air like drifting petals. Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, his smile radiant, not the smile of a man who had won, but of one who had finally been forgiven. That evening they returned home. The last light of day spilled over the lavender garden. Ava played the piano. Noah painted. Lily danced through the violet haze. Gabriel and Elena stood on the porch, hand in hand. He spoke quietly, his voice warm and steady like the sunset itself. "Our house once whispered through tears. Now it sings with love." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, her smile as gentle as the fading light. And the house that once whispered in pain now sang with hope. Forever.